All right. Hey there, and welcome to this episode. So, in this episode, I'm going to talk about the idea of recovery still. And I had some additional thoughts that I wanted to share. I know in the last episode, I talked about how I was going to, move into a new series, but I had two more thoughts that I wanted to share on the process of recovery. So, in the first parts of this series, we talked about the idea of physical and mental health recovery, viewing recovery as a practice, and really understanding it as a daily choice that we have in our lives. And I wanted to really talk about this analogy today of driving through a storm and how I think it parallels well with, at least my own experience, as well as the experience of many of my clients when it comes to recovering from things like OCD, anxiety, panic, even depression. So, real quick, for those of you that are listening or watching, I just would really appreciate if you would take a second and help support the show, especially if this is a show that you benefit from in some way, because we want to try to get this out to as many people as we can, and the only way to really do that is with your support, whether it's through liking or subscribing, as well as leaving comments or leaving a review on iTunes if you listen to the podcast. And however you can support us, we just would really appreciate it. I just want to ask for that before we dive in, if you would take a few minutes to do that, because it would again help us and also help other people, or help us get this to as many people as possible. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the analogy. So and you can use whatever analogy again works best for you when it comes to whether it's driving a car or um, being on a boat, and being in a storm. So I remember when I was, I think about 21, I did a cross country bicycle ride. And so we went from Boston, Massachusetts. We touched our bike in the Atlantic Ocean, or dipped our tires in the Atlantic Ocean. And then we ended in Santa Barbara, California. And I think the total trip was approximately like 64 days, something like that. And we rode, just like roughly 80 to 100 miles a day. Slept on the floor most nights. I mean, it was a pretty intense, pretty intense ride. So one time though, I remember, and it's funny, me being from California, it's like we get some rain sometimes. At least I thought we did. And what I've learned since is that we don't really know what we're talking about when it comes to rain in California, or the West Coast for that matter, probably in general, because I was in Missouri. We were heading into Missouri. We're heading into St. Louis, and I hit this storm, and like I didn't really know how hard it could rain until I had come into this storm. And we were on bikes, and the real idea is that like when we saw the storm coming, like that was one of the things about having like a bunch of land that I wasn't used to, is like you could actually see the storm like coming, and we had to go that way, and there was no real getting around it, right? We just rode right into it. And one of the things about going into a storm is that it naturally progresses, right? It's like it starts kind of like overcast, and then you can feel some rain, but then all of a sudden when you hit the real heavy part of the storm, it just gets heavy and crazy. And when you're in the midst of a storm, I mean, it is chaotic. It is absolute like chaos. And really, you're just trying to get to the next spot, trying to get to cover, trying to keep your head above float, or head above the water, so to speak. And that metaphor works for whether you're in a boat and on a storm, and you're in a car, you're on a storm, you're on a bike, you're walking. It doesn't matter, right? The point is when you're moving and you hit a storm, there are these levels of the storm. And if you're dealing with something like OCD, anxiety, um, panic, depression, there are situations in which the storm can be pretty on, like, that mental health storm could be rather quick onset. But usually, like I talked about, it's a practice that we've been engaging in for some time, and we finally have reached this pinnacle of it where the storms become unmanageable, and we're just trying to survive. And as we navigate a storm, it's important to understand that we can't just go, like if you're in the middle of a storm, you can't just go to the outside of the storm immediately. There's a natural process that needs to happen to get out. And when it comes to this recovery, it's important to remember that when you're in a storm, that you won't always know where you are in the storm. And sometimes it feels like I don't know if I'm even getting better. I don't know if the storm's getting worse. It's like this thing's lasted a long time. You can't, it's hard to really judge your progress. So one of the things you have to do is you have to trust in the general idea that the storm will pass. You have to trust in that. And by trusting in that, what that enables you to do is kind of to, put your compass north, so to speak, to head in a direction and to continue on that path until you reach the outside of the storm and you reach the sunny sky again. Because the sunny sky is always there. The storm just is covering it at that point. Your physical and mental well-being is there. It is your natural state. The storm is just covering it, right? And what we do oftentimes is that we get caught in these behaviors of trying to not have the storm or all this stuff, and that actually ends up perpetuating it and keeps us in there longer than we need to be. So by doing what you know you need to do, and this is what we talked about, by having that practice and practicing recovery, practicing the things that you know you need to be doing. And if you don't know what you need to be doing, again, at Restored Minds, check out our Taking Back Control program. I mean, we have real clear blueprint of how to put this stuff into practice for you. But as you go through the storm, right, what will happen is that you will naturally think like the storm won't be as bad one day as it was before. It doesn't mean that it's not storming, right? It just means that like it was a level 10 rain and now it seems kind of like a level 9. And then all of a sudden it's a level 8, and then all of a sudden it's a level 7, and then it's still raining out, but that it definitely wasn't raining as bad as it was, but it's still raining, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, maybe it's like kind of like a light rain, and you're like, okay, well, I'm still in the rain, I'm still getting wet, I'm still not at the sun, but it's definitely not the storm where it was. It's not the center part. And then all of a sudden one day it's kind of misty, and then you see clouds, and then you see the sun. And as you go through a storm, there's this natural path out of it. And it doesn't just happen from I feel terrible to I feel great overnight. And if usually the only way that happens is some kind of chemical substance that allows for that. And that's why, I don't necessarily advise that route. Because there's something to actually going through the storms of life that help us build persistence, resilience, determination, strength, all these great things that we can then take into our lives with, and we can't develop that unless we go through them. So when it comes to the storms, and obviously I hope you're understanding the metaphor here with recovery. When you're in it, it's not about doing everything you can to get out. Like, you have to really trust that there's going to be a process here to get out of it, and it's going to take some time. And the best way to do that is to really, again, do what you know you need to do, developing the right practice, and trusting that over time you will get to the edge of the storm, and then you'll get through it, and you'll get to that place where there is, the metaphorical sunny days again in your life. And with trusting that, it during the tumultuous times of real rain and real heaviness, and where the storm's at its worst, it gives you the courage to kind of weather that part out. Because if you think the storm is going to last forever, it's easy to develop feelings of hopelessness and overwhelm and all that. But when you can really trust that, like, hey, look, I know this is a storm, I know it can't last forever, and I know I'm going to get through it. As rough as it might be today, just remembering that you can and you will get to the other side of it by doing the correct practice, and by understanding that this is going to take some time, and it's going to take some patience, and you're going to have to be resilient. And sometimes that just means, hey, look, the win for the day is getting up, going to work, eating dinner, and getting home. And if you're able to do that, and that's what you were able to accomplish that day, that's great. So giving yourself that grace and allowing that patience is so important on this journey. So just wanted to share that analogy. And for those of you that are looking for help, if you're in a storm right now, again, it's something that you don't have to go through alone. And that's one of the things that I would also like to say is please don't go through this alone. And over at restoredminds.com, we have several different options and programs for you to assist you on this journey. So please check that out. We have some links right down in the notes, for some resources that are, we have a free resource, free guide for you in there to get you started. And yeah, please check out restoredminds.com to get some support and the correct guidance on this journey, because that will definitely help with this process and help expedite the process. So thanks so much for hanging out today, guys. And in the next episode, I'm going to talk about how recovery is a complete paradox. So I'm really excited to share that with you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for watching that video. And so if you're struggling with OCD and anxiety, I just wanted to let you know that we have a free training for you over at Restored Minds, where you can start learning how to use our AAA response to really break out of that loop and ultimately take back control of your life. And all you need to do to access is just click the little link below, and you'll be taken to a page where you can register today. Thank you so much.